A student is critically ill on a life support machine after taking the drug ecstasy at her 18th birthday party. Leah Betts collapsed after taking a tablet which police believe may have been contaminated. 4 young people are helping the police with their inquiries.
Her parents have released this photograph of their daughter in the hope that it would alert others to the risks of taking ecstasy or E. Leah's father, a former policeman, and her mother, a nurse whose job partly involves warning young people about drugs, spoke at a news conference this morning.
I've got love for my daughter. I've got anger for the people with the drugs. And I hate this bastard that supplied them.
And the message is to the children, just don't take the things. You're young, lovely looking kids. You don't need that sort of thing to have a good time. You can have a good time without someone else making money out of you.
From day one, the Leah Betts story looked as if it was going to be a classic moral panic. We have to keep in mind that there had been other deaths associated with taking ecstasy. There had been other deaths that had been reported in the front page of newspapers. But there was something in the Leah Betts story that was going to ensure that it actually got considerably more media coverage than any previous death.
For some people, it's the availability of the photographs and the images of her which makes it appealing to the media, because it's not an abstract person we're talking about. It's not just a name, and nor is it just an out-of-date photograph, as it quite often is in other cases. But actually, it's a very dramatic, very immediate photograph, in fact, of her on her deathbed. That makes it, I think, immediately very appealing to the media, and might explain why this case would receive far more attention than other cases where photographs may not have been available, or family members may not have been quite so willing to actually come forward and actually speak about their experiences and their feelings. I think also the fact that Leah Betts was young, white and pretty, as they put it, in itself made her more appealing to the media. And the implication is somehow the media finds particular sorts of victims attractive and other sorts of victims not attractive. In other words, somebody who's young, white and pretty fits the bill.
Leah collapsed at her home in the village of Latchington after taking 1 ecstasy tablet during her 18th birthday party. Her parents said they'd stayed in especially to watch out for drink and drugs at the party.
I stayed at home to try and, to watch over them, to try and, if there was anybody with that sort of thing, to stop it happening, and it happened in the next room.
Leah was studying for her A-levels at Basildon College. Today, friends in her year, many of whom attended her party, were still in deep shock.
I think it interrupts all those usual expectations or perhaps stereotypes of what drugs are and who's using them.
At Latchington, where the Betts family live, villagers were also grieving today.
I think we're just all shocked, really, that it should happen in a small village, really.
Well, all the village is upset. It could have been anybody's teenager.
Drug-related deaths are taking place in areas that you wouldn't normally expect them to be taking place. And somehow this also breaks, if you like, some of our boundaries or some of our expectations of what and where drugs are used and how they're used and who the normal users are and so on.
If we think about the classic ingredients of a moral panic, if we think about the urge to simplify causes, if we think about the urge to stigmatize, they were present in tabloid coverage. There was no doubt that there was a concern in the media about drug dealers who were peddling poison to innocent kids. As the story unfolded, it became quite clear that it was considerably more complex than had first been reported. Within a day, it became clear that the ecstasy tablet was pure. At the inquest, it became clear that Leah Betts had taken ecstasy tablets before. It was also established that Leah had died not as a result of a poisoned tablet, but as a result of a combination of taking the tablet and drinking too much water.
It's a tragic complication of ecstasy, and one which I hope people will take heed of.
At the trial of the person accused of supplying the drug some months later, it became clear that there was no Mr. Big or evil drug pusher hiding in the shadows. What had happened was that a young friend of Leah's had supplied the tablet to her as a birthday present.
I hope that all young people now realise that just helping a mate out can end up in all sorts of grief. There's at least 5 families that have been traumatised by this.
In his summing up, the judge, Mr. Justice Wright, said it was a shocking and tragic case. Sadly, he said, the primary responsibility for Leah Betts' death lay with Leah herself.
The Leah Betts case forced British society to face some uncomfortable realities. It would be no longer possible to simplify the cause of drug taking in British society, nor would it be possible to draw hard and fast boundaries between the deviant and the normal, because quite clearly Leah was the normal. This meant it would be very difficult to stigmatise her, or indeed any of her generation, as being classic folk devils.
The moral panic model, as it's used by some people, implies that the media or media reaction constructs a kind of a consensus around a particular issue that we all agree about. I think we need to ask ourselves more carefully whether such a consensus ever actually exists or not. It's not as if we can talk about the media as a kind of a homogeneous entity that means one thing or the other thing. It clearly reflects or contains within it a variety of diverse positions.
But do you think the publication of Leah's ordeal will make a difference?
I think this is a very, very tragic case, and I feel very strongly for the parents of this girl. It is an absolute tragedy. One 1991 estimate put the amount of ecstasy tablets consumed a week as 500,000. Tonight, there will be thousands and thousands of youngsters throughout the UK who know about this death and who will be taking ecstasy. Now, whether we print pictures of this girl's death or, you know, whatever people say about it, people will continue taking ecstasy. People will be taking ecstasy this weekend. And although emotions are running high, that's not really the way to deal with the problem.
OK, back to the testing.
Huge shifts in perception were taking place around this topic. For example, only 5 months after the death of their daughter, the Betts had clearly changed their position on what could and what should be done about drug taking in this country.
It's something that has impregnated the youth culture. It's here to stay. Saying no doesn't work. You'll never take them off of it. And hopefully, if we give the elder members of the young society more information, then they can make up their own informed choice.
Now, is that a counsel of despair, or do you really think we should be working now with school children?
It's being realistic.
Yeah. If you turn around to say to somebody, don't do it, no, it just doesn't work. And if you talk to a lot of young people, a lot of them do not know the downsides.
What should we be doing, Natalie?
I think that a lot of young people are very keen for that information, though. They want to know what it does to them.
Yes.
But the point is that that information's got to be given to them in a way that they accept and find culturally credible, and which does recognise that they gain an awful lot of pleasure from it as well. And I think that's where we fail time and time again. You can't just tell them that it's wrong, that it's going to harm them. You've got to look at their perspective.
Yes.
And work with that as well.
From the point of view of parents concerned about their children taking drugs, some unlucky kids out there who've had bad experiences, the moral panics around acid house and rave have been, you know, an unmitigated disaster, because nothing really has popularized drug taking more than this kind of media coverage. The majority of young people experiment in some way with illegal drugs or a misuse of prescription drugs. The majority of young people in this country drink before they're legally allowed to drink. And that is the norm.